Well, welcome back to the studio and a special edition of our Q&A. Now, normally our Q&As are the subscribers' questions. In this case, we're actually answering a question from Tesla themselves. So, a couple weeks after the end of the Energy Sovereignty Project in mid-January or so, we had the system go down. And when I got back to try and see what was going on, I checked all the usual suspects and the app had reported a fault, but it wasn't giving any data, so I needed to actually try and log on, check what was going on there. And so I checked the two sets of interior breakers that we have on our system for the Powerwalls. That was all fine. And the home was still running on grid power, so it wasn't a critical emergency. And so I notified SunWorks, and they had a technician that came out promptly. Now, what I neglected to check though was the 200 amp breaker on the Tesla gateway itself. Just me being an idiot, no excuse there. But it was good that we had the tech out anyway, because now we had somebody with the clout to actually contact Tesla themselves to see what the hell was going on with this rogue charging issue, so we can solve that once and for all. Or so I thought. Hence this video. But the reason the 200 amp breaker was tripped was because not only did the system start a rogue charge, the car was plugged in. And so that's 30 kilowatts from charging the batteries, 5 kilowatts per Powerwall, right? And maybe at the time probably 3, 4, 5 kilowatts or so going into the home load, and then 15 kilowatts from the car. And so it's somewhere between that 30 to 50 kilowatts of power being drawn from the grid, tripped the breaker to the gateway. So it's a bit terrifying, but hey, you know, that's what breakers are there for, right? So, but this time we were discussing this with the Tesla technician. He noted some things that were a little odd with our specific system. And one of the things that they noticed is that Tesla had for some reason shut off the automatic system updates, the automatic software updates to our system. Not sure why they did that, but that must have happened at some point around October 20th, because we were heavily testing the system, hoping for where we had those storm watch situations. You'll all remember that. And so right around the mid-September or so, we knew that we had some kind of a software update, because all of a sudden our self-powered mode acted strangely. It was getting some of these odd switching errors. You remember that from these previous videos that we did. And then the software seemed to undergo another change at some point in early to mid-October. And so around that time, obviously, must have been when they decided that they were going to cease updates to certain systems. I don't know. I'm not in the know there. Maybe somebody at Tesla can chime back in and talk with us and let us know what happened there. But now, since that time, I thought I had lost the ability to manipulate the system. Now, back in October, I was actually preparing to release a video that showed exactly how to do this. But then all of a sudden, it seemed like I had lost the ability to manipulate it. That information wasn't valid. It certainly wasn't valid enough for me to bring to you guys, and so it just kind of went into the bin of that's interesting, and we just left it for the time. So we did document it though. So I have the documentation of everything that we did at the time, which you will see repeated here. So after a long series of tests with Giuliano from Tesla's corporate tech support team, he requested that I send him that data from those experiments that we did, where we were able to then manipulate the system. So now fast forward to today. So for the last few days, our system hasn't been reporting any data to Tesla. And that's happened from time to time in the past. You know, sometimes it lasts a day or two. Once, I believe, in the past, I have actually had to give a call to Tesla and have them knock it loose. But because of my shooting schedule and the schedule here at the studio, I didn't really have time to mess with it much. And so then I just wound up putting that on the back burner until this morning when I gave them a shout. Now, I tried a couple of things to knock it loose. One of those things I tried was to set the system back to its self-powered mode and then set the reserve to 10%. No luck, nothing there. And so I gave Tesla a call this morning to try and see how to get it sorted out. And so now the caveat of what I'm about to say here is that this is from the software version 1.44.2, which is what we're still currently running. We're waiting for an update to our system. And we're also running an unusually large number of Powerwalls. We've got 6 Powerwalls on our system. Now, I don't know whether or not that has anything to do with what we're seeing, but because this is not a typical system, it's important to mention as we go forward and look at what I'm about to show you. So this morning during the call, the tech support gal, the first call that I had done, had me reset the system by logging onto the gateway itself with my phone and then forcing a reset from the gateway's perspective. And that seemed to work, and the system started reporting to Tesla right away. And before I could thank her for her time and everything, the phone dropped, the call dropped for whatever reason. But I figured, oh, all good, right? Well, not quite. Because when I checked my phone, I took a look at the system, and again, because the system was in self-powered mode, I was immediately greeted by this. So luckily, I had unplugged the car prior to this. I was actually getting ready to start my day, and so we didn't trip the breaker. But as you can see here, all the powers are pulling at full 30 kilowatts of charge, 5 kilowatts from each Powerwall. And the home has a slight draw, and the solar was contributing some, so that took some of the load off of the grid a little bit. And during the chat with tech support, here we go there. You can notice the green band here at the top of some of these screenshots that I'm putting up. That's me actually still being on the call with on the line with tech support. So during the chat with tech support, I was still connected to the call there, and you can see the technician was able to do something on their end, boop, that knocked it loose. Okay, great. Well, as they have me on hold and are escalating this call to somebody else who can take a look at the data, I got curious and I started to wonder, okay, well, are we back to a similar situation that we were in the end of September where I could still manipulate the system? And so I thought, okay, well, one of the ways that I was able to start a rogue charge from before was to set the system to a 100% reserve. And so I did. And as you can see here, the storm watch is shut off, and so any charging that's resulting here should not be because of that storm watch setting. The only thing that I altered was the reserve percentage. So that happened. And then here's the result of that. Here we go. And so it went right back into that rogue charging event. And so after getting it to rogue charge, well, now I'm really curious. And so now I thought, okay, well, can I get it to stop? Again, like we had done in our test before. Now, the way I'd gotten it to stop rogue charging before was to set the system to 0% and then set it to 3-4%. I tried a couple of different things. I can't honestly remember off the top of my head what setting I had gotten that got it to suddenly stop the rogue charge. But you first set it to 0, and so then that's what I did here. And as you can see here, it had no effect. still in that rogue charging mode. And so then I set the system to a 3% charge, and still no effect. And so I tried 2%, and nothing there. So at this point, the gentleman on tech support made the decision that it needed to be elevated to tier 2, and as we know, that means that they need to have somebody either from Tesla or somebody from SunWorks to actually have boots on the ground and see what the hell the system is possibly doing. But after I hung up the call, you should all know me by now, I wasn't about to give up so easily, so I tried 10%. And that seemed to be the magic number. All of a sudden, the rogue charging stopped within just a few seconds. When you make these changes, the system, you can hear it immediately. It goes through and you hear all of the batteries reset. Click, 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 click. So then shortly after that, it stabilized into this, which is kind of a normal operating mode, and I've been monitoring it all day long, and this is the mode that it's been in. And again, bring this up, all this was done on software version 1.44.2. And so, Giuliano, in answer to your question, that is how I'm able to manipulate the system to charge it from grid power. And so all of this was done early in the day where there was solar contribution still going on. And so now that it's 9 at night, let's go ahead and take a little field trip back to the system, and let's go ahead and try and repeat this one more time while there's no solar contribution whatsoever going on to the system, and let's see if we can get it to repeat. All right, well, welcome back to the system. And so now we've got the system sitting at, where are we at here? We're at a 90% charge overall in the system. I don't have the car plugged in. One of the things in the past that had actually initiated those rogue charging events was actually plugging in the car, so we're not going to do that. So let me take a quick screenshot here of our settings. We are on our self-powered mode with a backup percentage of 10%, which is where the system has been sitting all day long. And here is the power flow. Obviously it is 9 at night, and so we don't have any contribution from solar this time of night. And so now the only thing that we're going to change is we're going to change the reserve setting to 100%. Now, one of the things that I had noticed from that software update that we got in September, October, was that it used to be that you could wait for anything up to an hour, sometimes even longer than an hour. And it was just kind of the luck of the draw as to when you changed the setting for what your reserve was until the batteries actually reset themselves and then started to operate on the new setting. So now, this time though, let's go ahead and listen. Listen how fast this happens. So right now we're at 10%, and so now I'm going to go ahead and change this to 100%. Let's go ahead and get up here. Come on, come on. And so now we are, get it up here, come on. Okay, so now we're at 100%. Take a picture of that, and I'm going to get out of this screen and then listen. And we should hear the Powerwalls reset themselves. Yeah. So within about 8 seconds or so, the system has reset itself. Okay, well that's great. Well, now let's see what the hell it did. Give it a second here to warm up. And here we have our rogue charge. We've got 31.1 kilowatts now coming from the grid, and we have 28.8 going into the batteries. 30 kilowatts, nears makes no difference, and the home is using 1.3 kilowatts of power. The home we're using more. If the car was plugged in, this could easily get up into, like we said, into that 40 to 50 kilowatt range as far as the draw. So now we know that we can still get into a situation where we are charging the batteries from the grid, from grid power. Now let's see if we're able to go ahead and get back out of it again. And again, the way that we had done that in the past was to go from 100% to 0%. Now the interesting thing here is that when you go to 0%, going to 0% was also a way that we would initiate a rogue charge. But what I noticed from manipulating the system in the past is that if you tried to go from 100% to that 2 or 3 or 4% that we normally saw would turn the system off, it wouldn't do it unless you went to 0 and then went to that number. And so we're going to have to do that. And so first step is we're going to go ahead and again manipulate the system, manipulate our reserve charge here to 0%. Okay, so now we're at 0. I'll take a quick shot of that. And now we'll come off of the screen and we'll hear it reset. Yeah. There we go. And so now we are reset. And so now, in order to get back out of the situation that we're in, we went to 10%. And 10% brought us out previously today. So let's go ahead and, oh, I'm sorry, let me do one thing here real quick. Let me go ahead and get a screenshot of that. Still at 31.1 kilowatts of draw off of the grid and 29.8. And so now we'll go back into customize here and we'll go to 10%. And let's see if that shuts it off. There's our reset. And now when we go into power flow, let's see what we've got. Give it a second here to stabilize. And there we go. We've got 0.6 kilowatts coming from the batteries to feed the 0.6 kilowatts that is currently being drawn by the house. And so that's it. Let's head back to the studio and finish this video up and see what kind of conclusions we can draw. Well, that was about it. That's how we manipulate the system to get it to charge off of grid power. And again, even now with with no solar contribution in there. So hopefully that gives Giuliano and the crew over at Tesla some variability to be able to kind of see how this goes. Hopefully they'll be able to rule a few things out. We'll keep you posted as to how this all turns out. Obviously, these rogue charging situations, I don't know how many of you out there can replicate this. If anybody out there has a larger system that's running 1.4, 4.2, please let us know in the comments section if you're able to replicate what we did by going into self-powered mode and changing your reserve settings like we did. And hopefully they'll get this fixed. Hopefully they have now enough information to see what's going on. My hope is that the self-powered mode ultimately becomes just as stable as the cost savings and balanced modes are when I put the system into either one of those modes, we don't get those transitional spikes occurring in our system. That's always been kind of a case, well, not always, obviously, since September, that's been a case of annoyance with us because it's cumulatively given us 2.5, 3 kilowatt hours of error within the system. And then sometimes the system will put some of that back and sometimes it doesn't. And so that's been something that we've been wrestling with that I'm sure is related to this somehow because it doesn't do it in the other modes. So Giuliano, hopefully that information helps you guys out and everybody else that's out there. As always, good luck with your own systems and we will see you soon.